So I think you have to sit down and ask yourself, what are the problems that I'm facing because of cannabis consumption? And is moderate consumption going to resolve those problems? Because there's a chance that even moderate consumption won't resolve the things that you're hoping to improve upon since actually quitting. Okay, so here's the deal for today's video. I want to talk about returning to weed or cannabis consumption after you quit consuming cannabis because you struggled with a cannabis addiction or a cannabis substance use disorder. I want to talk about one, first and foremost, if that's possible, and then I want to share with you guys 3 reasons why I have decided to not return to moderate use as an ex-cannabis consumer, a stoner, whatever it is you want to call me, okay? Now, if you wind up enjoying the content in today's video, be sure to check out the links in the pinned comment in the video description to learn more about our paid and free program resources to help those of you who might be struggling with cannabis substance use disorder or weed addiction. Okay. All right, so first things first. Do I believe that after struggling for several years very deeply with weed addiction, that I could go back and consume weed moderately? Yes, I 1000% believe that I could if I chose to do that. And I want to emphasize the word chose or the word choice. If I made that choice, if I made that rational decision to do so. I think anyone is capable of consuming cannabis moderately, even after having had suffered with addiction, if you believe that you have free will, if you believe that you have willpower, and if you are under the impression or the belief that addiction and choosing to consume a substance is a choice. Now, I am a firm believer, and this is where I disagree with a lot of people, or I differ from a lot of people, that you can become physically dependent and physically addicted to cannabis. I believe that high concentration THC can manipulate your endocannabinoid system in such a way that you become dependent on it physically to eat food, to sleep, to function day to day without anxiety and depression. I believe fully in the physical dependence of cannabis, okay? Now, if you consume enough of it, frequently enough, then you become addicted to it. You become physically dependent upon it, okay? And I am confident that I could consume cannabis moderately to a point where I would not become physically dependent on it, where I could just do that from time to time and maybe enjoy myself with it, okay? But you can never do that if you believe that you have this raging addiction and that addiction is not a choice and that you are powerless over the substance. You will never go back to moderate consumption successfully. First point I want to make in today's video. Point number 2, why don't I then consume cannabis moderately if I full-heartedly believe that I could do that successfully? Well, there's 4 reasons why. Okay, reason number 1, just because you can consume cannabis moderately doesn't mean that your thoughts surrounding cannabis consumption are going to be moderate. So for me personally, and a lot of people who I appeal to on my channel, I have a very obsessive way of thinking. When I get into something, I like to become fully immersed in that something. I become obsessed over it. Hence our company's name and our tagline, AddictionMindset Recovery Coaching, become obsessed, okay? I view addiction and the mindset that surrounds addiction as an obsession. And look, I, by many people's standards today, was a moderate smoker. I consumed cannabis once a day, every night, and occasionally on weekends when I didn't have work. To someone who's consuming cannabis, like a lot of people we work with, from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed all day, every day, 7 days a week, 1 time a day at night is very moderate use. But that still really, really, really screwed me up. And it had to do with the fact that I was constantly thinking about, when can I smoke again? What am I going to smoke again? At the time, cannabis wasn't fully legal. So what am I going to get from my plug? I got to go to the bank. I got to get money to get it. Where am I going to smoke? At my apartment? At a friend's house? Who am I going to smoke with? What strain is he going to have? What am I going to use? A one-hitter? A PAX unit? Is he going to have a dab pen? Is it going to be out of a volcano vaporizer? I was obsessed with cannabis despite relatively moderate consumption. And even when I would tell myself, well, I'm just going to consume on weekends, all week long, I would be obsessing over that period of weekend consumption. So just because you could consume moderately doesn't mean that your thoughts aren't going to be obsessive and aren't going to be, the exact in complete excess. And that for me was a major problem because I wanted to free up space in my brain to think about other stuff, to obsess over other things that were going to give me a greater return on my investment. And that's exactly what happened when I quit, right? I started to obsess over my businesses. I started to obsess over my relationships. I started to obsess over my physical and mental health and taking better care of myself, right? So I'm very careful with the things that I choose to get obsessed over in today's world, today. Post-addiction. Next reason I don't like moderation is because for me, moderation is very painful. Why would I want to try and moderately consume something that I truly believe was giving me no investment on my return, something that for me no longer had any benefit? Smoking weed on a sad day didn't make it better. Smoking weed during a happy, joyful experience did not enhance that experience. So for me, why would I want to try and moderate something that gave me nothing? Why would I want to try and exercise willpower and effort to moderate something? If I truly enjoy something, I want to do that something all the time. I want to do that something a lot, right? Like I enjoy working out. I don't really try and moderate my working out, right? I enjoy going for walks. I don't really try and moderate the amount that I walk each day. I don't try and moderate growing my business and learning about how to grow businesses. I don't try and moderate growing my finances, right? I don't try and moderate the love that I have for my family and my wife and my son. Why would I want to moderate those things? I don't care to. I love doing those things. So for me, being an obsessive person that has what I call the addiction mindset, the mindset of obsession, the all-in mentality, moderation is painful. So for me, it was much easier just to say, okay, I'm done smoking weed and I'm never going to smoke again. That was actually a very freeing thought to have because now I don't have to fight all day long obsessing and thinking about weed and thinking about how I'm going to moderate and when I'm going to moderately consume it. I can just use that brain power. I can use that bandwidth on other stuff. Another reason why I choose not to moderate is because my environment has dramatically changed. Maybe when you first quit, moderation sounds appealing, but you have to remember you're coming from a standpoint of potentially physical dependence and weed addiction. So, of course, moderation sounds appealing. You don't know what the other side of that coin looks like. You only know this side. But after having had quit for so many years, my financial situation, my physical health, my relationships, my businesses, so much has changed in a very, very positive way. I no longer have any desire for moderation. My current environment is no longer conducive to any level of consumption of cannabis. And that's okay. I'm happy that that's the case. I'm happy that I no longer have a lot of the things in my life that I used to consume cannabis to cope with, that I'm no longer dealing with those things. So that's another reason why a lot of people don't choose moderation. It's because enough time goes by, their environment changes enough in a positive manner post-addiction that moderation is no longer appealing. Now, for myself too, another reason I choose not to moderate, and this is a very, very small reason, is I suffered from Cannabinoid Hyperemesis Syndrome. So even years later smoking, I could potentially consume cannabis and get really sick again, even years later of not smoking or not consuming. So, in the back of my mind, that's always there, but that's not like, I don't want people to think, oh, I choose not to moderate because I'm worried about getting sick again in CHS. That's like the least of the reasons why I choose not to moderate, but it is a factor. And if you've watched my videos, you know that's something I've struggled with and I've talked about in other videos. So I don't want to pretend to leave that out or pretend like that's not a factor. Last thing I'll say for people in moderation is moderation going to solve the issues that you're facing, right? I had a call the other day with a gentleman. He was like 18 years old, getting ready for college. And he was like, I'm thinking about consuming moderately. And during that call, we determined that he was probably still going to think about it obsessively. So that for him, he was concerned about. That's a problem. But two, he was talking about the strain that it put on his relationship between him and his parents, because his parents didn't want him smoking weed. Okay. Now, whether you agree with that or disagree is kind of irrelevant. But I was like, look, at the end of the day, even moderate consumption based on your relationship with your parents is still going to put strain. It's still going to require you to lie to your parents about your consumption. So my thing to him, and he cared deeply about his relationship with his parents. So my thing was, okay, even if we stop consuming every day, is moderate consumption going to achieve the mending of that relationship? And the answer was ultimately no in his case. And in some other cases, it might be yes. But in his case, the answer was no. So I think you have to sit down and ask yourself, what are the problems that I'm facing because of cannabis consumption? And is moderate consumption going to resolve those problems? Because there's a chance that even moderate consumption won't resolve the things that you're hoping to improve upon since actually quitting, okay? And, look, there's the other thing on moderate consumption, too. If you really do got an addiction and dependence, right, it's like a lot of times we just wind up consuming moderately, putting this drug or this substance on a pedestal then. And it's like people almost praise this idea that, like, finally, I'm going to get to Friday, I can smoke. Finally, I'm going to get to Wednesday, I can smoke. I can consume moderately. And then all week long, they've put this drug on a pedestal and just very anxiously waiting to get to that moment to finally get some reprieve from that stress and anxiety that was built up from waiting to consume cannabis again. So it's based on all those factors that I don't do moderation, but I'm fully confident that you could if you want to. I'm fully confident that I could if I wanted to. It's just based on all those things, I don't want to. And look, if you're saying Dr. Frank, that's outrageous to even recommend moderation, I highly recommend you join. Either hop on a one-on-one call. We got one-on-one calls and one-on-one coaching programs where you work with me directly, or we have the Addiction Mindset School community. At the time I'm releasing this video, we have a free 7-day trial to join that community going. And we're going to be doing a detox challenge here in January, going into January 2025. You can find the links for all that stuff and our free handouts and PDFs in the pinned comment to this video, or the links in the video description right here on YouTube. Until next time.